Imagine discovering your husband has been cheating on you, with your own cousin. That's exactly what happened to me, until I had the last laugh he never saw coming. Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. I had been married to Jason for 8 years. On the outside, everything seemed perfect. He was charming, successful, and everyone admired our relationship. But that image shattered the day I stumbled upon his phone while charging it in the living room. At first, I didn't want to believe what I saw: texts, secret messages, and pictures exchanged with Vanessa, my own cousin. My hands shook, and my heart raced. I felt like the ground beneath me had disappeared. The betrayal was overwhelming. Jason, the man I trusted with my life, had been sneaking around with someone I considered family. I couldn't understand how he could do this, not just to me, but to our family. My mind kept replaying every moment of our marriage, every sacrifice I had made for him, and suddenly, all of it felt like a lie. The anger mixed with sadness, making it hard to breathe. I stayed in my room that night, staring at the ceiling, thinking about what to do. Part of me wanted to leave him immediately, pack my things, and never look back. But another part, a stronger part, felt a fire inside me, a need to make things right, not with violence or yelling, but by taking control. I realized this was not the time to be weak. This was the moment to be smart, to plan carefully, and to make sure he understood the consequences of his actions. I remembered all the times I supported him, encouraging his career, helping with bills, even putting my own dreams on hold for us. And now, knowing he had betrayed me in the worst way possible, I decided that I wasn't going to let him get away with it. I would rise above the hurt and show him that I was stronger than he ever imagined. That night, I made a silent promise to myself. I would not let this betrayal define me. Instead, it would fuel me to rebuild my life, to take control of my happiness, and to make sure Jason realized that what he thought was his victory was actually his biggest mistake. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I also knew that justice doesn't always come from anger, it comes from strategy and patience. And so, with a heavy heart but a determined mind, I started to plan. I wouldn't rush or act recklessly, but every step I took from that moment on would be a step toward reclaiming my life and my dignity. The journey ahead would test me, but I was ready. I was ready to turn this betrayal into the start of something stronger, something he could never take away from me. After that first shocking discovery, I began noticing Jason acting differently. He started coming home later than usual, always with excuses about work meetings or staying late at the office. His phone was never out in the open anymore, he would take it everywhere, sometimes leaving the room when it rang. Something in his behavior felt off, a tension that I couldn't ignore. Vanessa, my cousin, seemed to appear at the most inconvenient times. She would coincidentally visit our neighborhood or claim she needed to drop by for a quick chat. At first, I tried to convince myself it was normal, that maybe I was overthinking things. But the little coincidences started adding up, and a knot of suspicion formed in my stomach. One evening, I met with my close friend Mia for coffee. I couldn't hide the unease I was feeling anymore. As I shared the strange incidents and my fears, she looked at me with a serious expression. "Claire," she said, "he's not just hiding things from you. He's hiding her." Her words hit me like a punch. I tried to brush it off, thinking maybe I was letting paranoia take over, but deep down, I knew she was right. The warning lingered in my mind for days. I started paying attention to Jason's movements more closely. I noticed him texting when he thought I wasn't watching, stepping out for long calls, and making excuses to avoid family events where Vanessa might show up. The unease grew heavier each day, like a storm waiting to break. Then, one night, I couldn't ignore it anymore. Jason told me he was going out for a late dinner with a colleague, and I felt a sudden, inexplicable urge to follow him. I drove quietly behind him, keeping a distance, and watched him pull into a small, dimly lit restaurant. My heart pounded as I saw Vanessa already there, sitting at a table, smiling, and talking intimately with him. They laughed together, holding hands across the table, completely unaware I was watching. Seeing them there, in that moment, confirmed everything I had feared. The betrayal was real, and it was worse than I had imagined. The person I trusted completely was living a lie, and my own cousin was part of it. The mix of hurt and anger that rose inside me was almost unbearable, but I knew one thing clearly: I couldn't let this go unanswered. That night, I went home silently, my mind racing. I felt the pain of betrayal, but it was accompanied by a growing determination. I had proof now, undeniable proof of Jason's affair. The situation was no longer just a suspicion, it was reality. And with that reality, I realized I had to be careful, smart, and deliberate in how I would respond. I made a promise to myself then: I would not let him win. I would take control, and I would make sure he understood the consequences of what he had done. The journey of dealing with betrayal had begun, and I was ready to face it head-on. After seeing Jason and Vanessa together, my world felt like it had fallen apart. I went home that night and locked myself in my apartment. The walls seemed to close in on me as tears streamed down my face. I couldn't stop thinking about how someone I trusted completely could betray me so deeply. Every memory of our life together now felt tainted, and the pain was crushing. I found myself replaying the past, remembering all the sacrifices I had made for him. I had supported Jason through business school, working extra hours so he could focus on his studies. I had helped pay off his family debts when they hit hard times. I had always put him first, often setting aside my own dreams and ambitions to make sure he succeeded. And now, all of that care and loyalty seemed meaningless. The betrayal cut deeper because it came from someone I had given everything to, someone I had trusted with my heart. Every night, I sat alone in my apartment, staring at the ceiling, asking myself over and over: was it me? Did I fail somehow? The questions gave me no answers, only more pain. I felt isolated, like no one could understand the storm I was living through. I didn't want to see anyone or talk to anyone. I just wanted to disappear from the world that had suddenly become so cruel. But as the tears fell, a small, burning voice inside me began to grow. A part of me refused to be broken by this. I realized that Jason might think he could destroy me with his lies and cheating, but he was wrong. I was stronger than my grief, stronger than the betrayal, and stronger than the heartbreak. I refused to let him see me defeated. That night, in the quiet of my apartment, I made a silent vow to myself. I would not let his actions define me or control my life. I would take back the power he thought he had taken away. His betrayal would not be the end of me, it would be the turning point where I chose to rise. Even though I was shattered, a determination began to form. I understood that surviving this meant more than just enduring the pain, it meant planning my next steps carefully. I needed to heal, gather my strength, and prepare for the moment when I could show him that betrayal cannot destroy someone who refuses to be broken. That night, I cried until my eyes were swollen, but when I finally closed them, I felt a flicker of hope. The pain was still there, but so was a growing resolve. I was determined to turn this heartbreak into power, and I knew that one day, Jason would realize that underestimating me had been his biggest mistake. After that painful period, I decided I couldn't stay broken forever. I needed to focus on myself and my future, not just dwell on Jason's betrayal. I started pouring my energy into my career, the part of my life I had neglected for too long. For years, I had dreamed of investing in a tech startup I believed had huge potential. Now, I finally had the drive and determination to make it happen. I began quietly researching, analyzing the company's growth, talking to advisors, and preparing my investment. Everything was done in secret. I didn't want Jason or Vanessa to know I was planning something big. On the surface, I acted calm and composed, as if I were still hurt and confused, but inside, I was building my own path to independence and power. Meanwhile, Jason was completely unaware of my plans. He continued his affair with Vanessa, boasting about how easy it would be to leave me and start a new life. He didn't suspect that I was observing him closely, taking note of every careless word, every sign of arrogance, and every weakness he showed. He thought I was weak, broken, and vulnerable, but in reality, I was learning everything I could about him. I started keeping track of his habits, his spending, and his ambitions. I noted how much he depended on certain colleagues, how his ego made him predictable, and how his desire for recognition could be used against him. Every conversation he had with Vanessa or his coworkers gave me insights I could use later. I realized that understanding him better than he understood himself could give me the advantage I needed. At the same time, I strengthened my own skills. I took online courses, spoke to mentors, and expanded my network. I wanted to be ready for the moment I would take control, not just financially, but in every way that mattered. Every step I took, every decision I made, was moving me closer to a position where Jason's betrayal would no longer have any power over me. The more I worked, the more confident I became. I no longer felt like a victim, I felt like someone who had been wronged but was actively reclaiming her life. Each day of focus, each secret investment, and each careful observation of Jason made me feel stronger. I knew that patience and preparation would be my greatest allies. By the time I made my move, I would not only be successful, but I would also have the upper hand in every way. Jason's arrogance and underestimation of me would be his downfall. And as I quietly gathered my strength, I felt a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. This time, the power was mine, and I wasn't going to waste it. After months of careful planning and quiet investment, I finally acquired a controlling share in the very company Jason had been working for all these years. It was the same place he had poured his time and effort into, never suspecting that the person he betrayed was about to hold the most power there. The moment I realized this, a mix of satisfaction and determination filled me. I knew the time had come to act carefully and strategically. At first, Jason didn't notice anything unusual. He continued with his usual arrogance, walking into meetings, giving orders, and taking credit for work he thought he had full control over. I stayed in the background, observing and learning how the company really operated. I paid attention to the dynamics, the alliances, and the gaps that could be leveraged. Every small detail I noted would later help me take full control. I began attending board meetings quietly, never announcing my ownership right away. I listened to conversations, asked subtle questions, and started building relationships with other executives who were often overlooked or ignored by Jason. Slowly, I positioned myself as someone reliable, smart, and trustworthy. People started looking to me for advice, unaware that I now had the ultimate power in the room. Inside, I kept reminding myself, let him think he's winning. The game hasn't even started yet. I needed him to remain confident, to continue underestimating me, and to show his true colors. His arrogance would be his undoing, and I intended to make every step calculated so that the moment I revealed myself, it would be impossible for him to recover. I watched Jason make small mistakes, show favoritism, and overlook critical details, all while thinking he was untouchable. Meanwhile, I quietly strengthened my position, ensuring that the other executives understood my vision and respected my input. They didn't know that I was now the majority shareholder, but they trusted me because I stayed calm, professional, and observant. The thrill of the plan coming together was intoxicating. Every time Jason bragged about his accomplishments, I remembered the betrayal, the late nights I cried, and the hurt I had endured. That pain had been transformed into focus and strategy. I was no longer reacting emotionally, I was acting methodically, preparing for the perfect moment to reveal the truth. By the time Jason realized what had happened, it would be too late for him to undo anything. I would have built an unshakable foundation, surrounded by allies who respected me and supported my vision. Every boardroom discussion, every subtle move, and every careful observation had brought me to this point. I felt a quiet confidence I had never known before. I was no longer the person betrayed and broken. I was in control, and Jason was walking right into the trap he had unknowingly helped me set. The game was just beginning, and I was ready to win. Jason's arrogance continued to grow. He acted as if nothing had changed, openly flaunting his affair with Vanessa and bragging to colleagues about his perfect life. He was careless, thinking I was still weak and broken, and that I had no influence over anything. Every boast, every careless word, and every moment of overconfidence became a tool I could use. I began subtly undermining him at work, making small but precise moves that no one would immediately notice. I delayed approvals on projects he was eager to push through, ensuring deadlines shifted and his plans seemed less effective. I quietly cut him off from key projects by redirecting resources and support to initiatives that aligned with my growing control. These actions were invisible to him, but they slowly reduced his influence without raising suspicion. At the same time, I strengthened my position with the board. I cultivated relationships, showed insight, and provided guidance that others trusted. While Jason assumed everyone still supported him fully, I was building a network that understood and respected my perspective. Every suggestion I made, every careful recommendation, subtly shifted the company in my favor. He didn't even realize that his own actions were helping me gain more influence. Jason continued to flaunt his confidence and superiority, but each careless move fed into my strategy. His ego made him predictable. He underestimated the effect of his arrogance on colleagues and the board. While he believed he was untouchable, I quietly strengthened my position, letting his overconfidence do the work for me. Every meeting he dominated, every decision he bragged about, subtly reinforced the control I now held. Inside, I stayed calm and focused. I never reacted openly or emotionally. Instead, I observed, waited, and acted strategically. The more Jason flaunted his so-called perfect life, the more I saw openings to advance my influence. Each project he mishandled, each overstep he made, strengthened my position. I had transformed my pain into power, using his own arrogance and betrayal against him. I reminded myself constantly that patience and subtlety were my greatest allies. There was no rush, no need for dramatic confrontations. The board, the projects, and the company structure all worked as silent allies now. Jason thought he was winning, but every step he took moved me closer to a point where he would have no control left. By the time the truth was revealed, his confidence and bragging would make his downfall even more complete. I had become the quiet force behind the scenes, reshaping the company while he remained blind to what was happening. Every action he took unknowingly strengthened my influence and made him weaker. The satisfaction of knowing that he would eventually realize too late that he had been outsmarted gave me a sense of calm power. I no longer felt like the victim. I had turned his arrogance into my advantage, and every move he made was now part of a larger plan I had carefully designed. Jason's betrayal had become the tool for my ultimate revenge. One morning, I called Jason into what I told him was an important business meeting. He arrived confident, smug even, expecting to discuss routine company matters. He had no idea that this meeting would change everything. As he settled into the boardroom, I watched him, calm and composed, letting him believe he was still in control. I began the meeting with a few general remarks, listening to his updates and letting him speak at length. Then, at the perfect moment, I revealed the truth. I told him that I was now the majority shareholder of the company, the very company he had dedicated years of work to, thinking he had earned loyalty and influence. I explained clearly that I had purchased controlling shares quietly, while he had been too arrogant to notice, believing I was still emotionally weak and powerless. The shock on his face was immediate and undeniable. His eyes widened, his hands fidgeted, and for a brief moment, he was completely silent. The confidence he had carried for so long evaporated instantly. He could not believe that the wife he had dismissed and betrayed was the one holding the power he had always assumed was his. I calmly outlined how I had built my position, attending board meetings, building alliances, and understanding the inner workings of the company. Every step I had taken, every observation I had made, had led to this moment. I could see him struggling to process what I was saying, unable to find a response. Jason's usual arrogance and pride offered no defense. The board members, who had once deferred to him, now looked at me with respect and approval. They had seen my contributions, my insight, and my leadership, and they knew the truth. He was no longer the one in charge. As he tried to speak, his words came out hesitant and disjointed. He stammered, asking how this had happened, how I could have done this without him noticing. I simply looked at him and reminded him that his own overconfidence had blinded him. While he flaunted his affair and believed I was broken, I was quietly building the foundation for this moment. The room was silent except for my voice as I explained that every move he had made now benefited me, strengthening my control over the company without him realizing it. Every careless action, every boast, and every step he took while flaunting his life with Vanessa had played right into my hands. Seeing him like that, stunned, powerless, and humiliated, brought a strange mix of satisfaction and relief. Years of pain, heartbreak, and betrayal had led to this precise moment. I finally had the control and the respect I deserved. That day, Jason learned that underestimating me had been his biggest mistake. The wife he had thought broken had outsmarted him completely, and there was no way he could recover from the shock of losing everything he assumed he owned. I had turned the betrayal into my ultimate advantage. Jason couldn't believe what had just happened. He looked around the boardroom, his face pale, eyes wide with panic. He stumbled over his words, trying to explain himself, to deny what was now obvious to everyone. But nothing he said mattered. His usual confidence was gone, replaced by desperation and shame. Vanessa, realizing the situation, erupted in anger. She slammed her purse on the table, glared at Jason, and stormed out of the room. Her exit left him completely alone, facing not just me, but a room full of colleagues who had watched the entire confrontation unfold. The betrayal he had committed was now exposed, and there was no one to support or defend him. I remained calm, my voice steady as I spoke directly to him. "You thought you could destroy me with lies," I said slowly, letting each word sink in, "but the truth is, your betrayal was my opportunity." I could see his hands trembling, his jaw tightening, and his pride collapsing under the weight of what he had lost. The board members, who had once deferred to him, now looked at him with disappointment and judgment. He had assumed he could manipulate the company, flaunt his affair, and continue with his life as if nothing mattered. But every step he took had led him straight into this moment. Every boast, every arrogant decision, every careless move had played right into my hands. Jason tried to speak again, but the words sounded hollow, forced, and weak. He realized, finally, that the control he had taken for granted was gone. He had thought I was defeated, that I would crumble in silence, but he had miscalculated completely. His arrogance had blinded him, and now he was paying the price in front of everyone who had once admired him. I watched him struggle, powerless and humiliated. There was no way he could undo the situation or regain the authority he had lost. The room that had once been his domain now reflected his failure. He had underestimated me, and that mistake had cost him everything he believed he deserved. For the first time, I felt the full weight of justice and satisfaction. The pain he had caused me, the betrayal, and the sleepless nights were all transformed into a moment of triumph. I didn't need to yell, fight, or embarrass him aggressively, his own actions had done that for me. As Jason sat there, silent and defeated, I realized how powerful patience, planning, and self-control could be. I had turned heartbreak into strength, betrayal into strategy, and pain into opportunity. He had walked blindly into his own downfall, and I had guided every step without him even knowing. That day, the humiliation he faced was complete. He had no defense, no escape, and no power. And as I left the boardroom later, I felt a quiet, unshakable peace. The revenge was complete, not through anger, but through calculated, unstoppable control. After the confrontation, I focused on rebuilding and improving the company. I restructured departments, introduced better systems, and worked closely with the team to ensure efficiency and growth. The employees, who had once followed Jason without question, now respected me for my leadership and clear vision. The changes weren't just about asserting control, they were about creating a company that reflected my values and strength. As the company thrived under my guidance, I took moments to reflect on everything I had been through. The pain, betrayal, and heartbreak had been intense, but they had also shaped me into someone stronger and more determined. I often reminded myself, pain can either break you or make you unstoppable. I chose to rise. That mantra became my daily motivation, guiding my decisions and helping me stay focused on growth rather than revenge alone. Financially, I was more secure than I had ever been. I had built an empire from the opportunities Jason had underestimated, and the satisfaction went beyond money. I felt a sense of accomplishment and independence that no betrayal could ever take away. Emotionally, I felt free. The weight of anger and sadness that had once consumed me had lifted, replaced with confidence, clarity, and a sense of purpose. Morally, I felt proud of how I had handled everything. I had never stooped to cruelty or dishonesty. Instead, I used strategy, patience, and intelligence to turn a painful situation into my advantage. The lessons I learned about resilience, foresight, and self-worth were invaluable, and I knew they could help others facing similar struggles. That realization inspired me to start mentoring women who had experienced betrayal or injustice in their personal lives or careers. I shared my story, my mistakes, and my strategies for turning challenges into opportunities. Helping others regain confidence and independence gave me a sense of fulfillment that went beyond professional success. It became another form of victory, one rooted in empowerment rather than revenge. I also rebuilt my personal life. I focused on friendships, self-care, and pursuing interests that I had put aside for years. I traveled, met new people, and explored passions that brought me joy. For the first time in a long time, I felt fully alive, not defined by betrayal or hurt, but by my choices and my growth. Looking back, I understood that every painful moment had led to this point. The betrayal that had once shattered me became the catalyst for change, strength, and achievement. I had turned loss into opportunity, heartbreak into strategy, and despair into empowerment. By the time I fully moved on, I had not only reclaimed my life and company but also created a legacy of strength and resilience. I knew I could face anything in the future because I had survived, learned, and grown from one of the hardest experiences of my life. After everything was settled, I moved forward with my life, stronger and more confident than I had ever been. The betrayal I once thought would destroy me had instead shaped me into someone unstoppable. I no longer carried the weight of anger or sadness. Instead, I carried a sense of purpose and clarity. Every decision I made now was guided by wisdom, experience, and a firm understanding of my own strength. Jason, once so proud and arrogant, had become a shadow of the man he used to be. The confidence and control he had taken for granted were gone, replaced by regret and humiliation. He realized too late that underestimating me had been his greatest mistake. Vanessa, too, felt the consequences of her choices. She regretted being part of his schemes and the pain she had caused. Their actions, which once seemed powerful, had ultimately led to their own downfall. I took time to reflect on everything I had endured, the heartbreak, the sleepless nights, and the moments of doubt. Each challenge had tested me, but each also taught me something invaluable. I learned that betrayal does not have to define you, that pain can be transformed into strength, and that the smartest victories are often the quietest. My life had changed dramatically, not because I sought revenge for the sake of anger, but because I refused to let anyone take my power. Through this journey, I also realized the importance of control, not over others, but over my own life. By focusing on my goals, making thoughtful decisions, and remaining calm in the face of deceit, I had reclaimed everything that was once taken from me. I had turned a moment of devastation into an opportunity for growth, independence, and success. Mentoring others became a part of my life as well. Sharing my story with women who faced betrayal, teaching them to see strength in their struggles, and helping them rebuild their confidence gave me a sense of fulfillment that went beyond personal achievement. I had not only restored my own life, but I had also inspired others to rise above their challenges. Looking back, I realized how crucial patience and strategy had been. The sweetest victories are often the ones that aren't loud or immediate but are complete and undeniable. My journey was a testament to that. I didn't need to humiliate Jason publicly or act out of anger. I simply took control of the life he thought he could ruin, and that was more powerful than any act of revenge could ever be. And so, I share this message to anyone who has faced betrayal. Never underestimate a person who has been wronged but refuses to be broken. Sometimes, the quietest, most calculated actions bring the deepest justice. My life today is proof of that, and it serves as a reminder that true strength comes from resilience, intelligence, and the refusal to let others dictate your worth. Never underestimate a woman betrayed by those she trusted. Sometimes, the sweetest revenge isn't loud, it's complete control of the life they thought they ruined.